At our 30th wedding anniversary celebration, my mother-in-law stood before 200 guests and announced that my husband was transitioning into renewable energy consulting because someone in the family finally needs to accomplish something meaningful. She had no idea that I was the regional regulatory commissioner who would be reviewing every single project he hoped to pursue. By the end of that evening, the same woman who had dismissed me as a simple housewife for 3 decades would be desperately seeking my professional favor. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The morning of our Pearl anniversary began with the same routine that had characterized 3 decades of marriage to Jonathan Whitmore. I prepared breakfast in our Westchester County kitchen while reviewing regulatory documents on my tablet, a practice I had maintained since earning my appointment as Regional Regulatory Commissioner for the New York State Energy Authority 5 years earlier. The irony of my situation had become a source of quiet amusement rather than frustration. My husband believed I worked part-time as an administrative assistant for a small consulting firm, while my mother-in-law, Victoria Whitmore, remained convinced that I spent my days organizing charity luncheons and managing household affairs. This carefully maintained fiction had developed over years of deliberate misdirection rather than outright deception. When asked about my work, I would mention reviewing paperwork and attending meetings, statements that were technically accurate while omitting the scope and significance of my responsibilities. When Victoria inquired about my contributions to family finances, I would deflect to discussions about Jonathan's accounting practice or household budget management, allowing assumptions to persist without correction. The preservation of this domestic facade served multiple strategic purposes that had become increasingly valuable as my regulatory authority expanded. My colleagues at the Energy Authority knew me as Dr. Margaret Chen Whitmore, a professional identity I had maintained using my maiden name and doctoral credentials in environmental engineering. This separation between my professional and domestic personas provided operational security that prevented potential conflicts of interest while protecting my family from unwanted attention or political pressure. Victoria Whitmore represented everything I had learned to navigate around during 30 years of marriage into the prominent Whitmore family of Connecticut. Her background combined old money privilege with social prominence that created expectations about appropriate roles for family members, particularly women who married into the family structure. Victoria had spent decades orchestrating social events, managing charitable foundations, and maintaining relationships with influential political and business leaders throughout the Northeast Corridor. Her assessment of my contributions to the family had crystallized during our engagement period, when she openly questioned whether Jonathan was settling for someone beneath his social and professional standing. My background as the daughter of immigrant parents who had built successful careers in engineering and medicine apparently failed to meet her standards for appropriate family connections. My decision to pursue advanced education rather than immediately focusing on marriage and children had reinforced her perception that I lacked proper understanding of traditional family priorities. Throughout 3 decades of family gatherings, holiday celebrations, and social events, Victoria had consistently positioned me as Jonathan's wife, rather than acknowledging my independent professional identity or achievements. She would introduce me to her friends as someone who helped Jonathan manage his household responsibilities, while he focused on building his accounting practice. During conversations about careers and professional accomplishments, she would redirect attention to Jonathan's business development or our children's educational achievements, while treating my work as supplementary family income rather than serious professional contribution. The decision to maintain separation between my professional and domestic identities had evolved gradually, rather than emerging from deliberate strategic planning. Early in my regulatory career, I had discovered that family social events often included individuals with business interests that could be affected by Energy Authority decisions. Maintaining professional anonymity within family contexts prevented uncomfortable situations where social relationships might conflict with regulatory responsibilities. Jonathan's accounting practice served clients throughout the financial services and real estate development sectors, industries that frequently intersected with energy regulatory matters. His professional network included developers, investors, and consultants who regularly appeared before the Energy Authority for project approvals and compliance reviews. Revealing my regulatory position within these social contexts could create appearance of impropriety, even when no actual conflicts existed. The concealment strategy had become increasingly sophisticated as my authority and influence expanded within the regulatory framework. I maintained separate professional communication systems, attended industry events under my maiden name, and coordinated my schedule to avoid situations where my regulatory identity might intersect with family social obligations. This operational security required careful planning and consistent attention to detail that had become second nature over 5 years of dual identity management. My colleagues at the Energy Authority understood the necessity of maintaining professional separation from family business interests. The renewable energy sector involved substantial financial stakes and political considerations that required regulatory commissioners to maintain independence from potential influence or pressure. My ability to evaluate projects based purely on technical merit and regulatory compliance had earned respect throughout the industry while remaining completely unknown to my extended family. The children, David and Sarah, had grown accustomed to their mother's professional travel and irregular schedule without understanding the significance of my regulatory responsibilities. They knew I worked for a government agency involved in environmental matters, information that satisfied their curiosity without requiring detailed explanation of my authority over multi-billion-dollar infrastructure projects. Their assumption that I handled administrative duties rather than major policy decisions reflected the same underestimation that characterized broader family perceptions. Victoria's assessment of my capabilities and contributions reflected broader social assumptions about appropriate roles for women within traditional family structures. Her generation had established clear expectations about marriage priorities, career limitations, and social responsibilities that shaped her understanding of family dynamics and individual worth. These assumptions created blind spots that prevented recognition of capabilities or achievements that fell outside established patterns. The persistence of these limiting assumptions, despite contradictory evidence, revealed psychological investment in maintaining familiar social hierarchies rather than adapting to changing realities. Victoria needed to believe that her social position and family influence provided her with comprehensive understanding of family members' capabilities and contributions. Acknowledging that she had fundamentally misunderstood my professional identity for 3 decades would challenge her self-perception as sophisticated judge of character and social dynamics. Jonathan's complicity in maintaining these assumptions stemmed from different motivations that included both genuine ignorance and willful blindness to aspects of my professional life that might complicate his own social and business relationships. His accounting practice benefited from his mother's social connections and business network, relationships that could become complicated if his wife's regulatory authority became widely known among potential clients or business partners. The psychological comfort of familiar assumptions often proves more appealing than the complexity of revised understanding, particularly when change might require acknowledgement of previous misjudgments or adaptation of established relationship patterns. Victoria had invested 3 decades in viewing me as conventional housewife, whose primary contributions involved supporting Jonathan's career and managing domestic responsibilities. Revising this assessment would require confronting her own limitations in recognizing competence that existed outside her established expectations. 5 years of serving as Regional Regulatory Commissioner had taught me valuable lessons about the strategic advantages of being underestimated by those who assumed they understood my capabilities and position. Opponents in regulatory proceedings often approached negotiations with casual confidence that reflected their assumptions about my technical knowledge and political influence. This underestimation typically resulted in inadequate preparation that provided me with significant advantages in hearings, negotiations, and policy discussions. The renewable energy sector attracted numerous participants who combined technical expertise with political sophistication, yet many continued to approach regulatory processes with outdated assumptions about commissioner backgrounds and capabilities. My engineering education and industry experience provided technical depth that exceeded many participants' expectations, while my regulatory experience had developed negotiation and policy skills that often surprised those who assumed I would be easily influenced or outmaneuvered. Strategic patience had become one of my most valuable professional assets during complex regulatory proceedings that required careful timing and tactical positioning. The ability to allow others to reveal their strategies, assumptions, and limitations before responding had consistently provided advantages in achieving regulatory outcomes that served broader public interests while maintaining professional relationships necessary for ongoing effectiveness. The family context provided excellent training ground for developing these strategic patience capabilities. 3 decades of managing Victoria's social expectations and Jonathan's career priorities while building my own professional authority had required sophisticated understanding of timing, positioning, and relationship management that translated directly to regulatory leadership responsibilities. The path to regulatory commissioner appointment had required building comprehensive expertise across multiple disciplines that included environmental engineering, energy policy, regulatory law, and public administration. My doctoral dissertation had examined renewable energy integration challenges that were becoming increasingly relevant as state and federal policies shifted toward sustainable energy development. This academic foundation had provided theoretical understanding that practical regulatory experience had transformed into operational expertise. Industry recognition had developed gradually through participation in professional associations, technical working groups, and policy development committees that shaped regulatory frameworks at state and federal levels. My contributions to these professional activities had established reputation for technical competence and political independence that made me an attractive candidate for regulatory appointment when the position became available. The appointment process had required extensive background investigation and political review that confirmed my qualifications while revealing the strategic value of maintaining separation between professional and family identities. The ability to demonstrate independence from potential business conflicts had been a crucial factor in securing appointment to position that required public trust and political credibility. 5 years of regulatory experience had expanded my authority and influence beyond initial appointment scope as renewable energy development accelerated throughout the region. Major infrastructure projects required my review and approval, policy decisions shaped industry development patterns, and regulatory precedents established frameworks that affected billions of dollars in private investment and public resource allocation. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. As I prepared for our anniversary celebration on that Saturday morning, I could not have anticipated that Jonathan's professional transition into renewable energy consulting would create the perfect convergence of circumstances that would finally make my regulatory identity visible within family contexts. The announcement that Victoria planned to make regarding Jonathan's career change would transform 3 decades of assumed limitation into undeniable demonstration of actual authority and influence. The renewable energy consulting market that Jonathan hoped to enter was precisely the sector where my regulatory authority proved most significant and visible. Every project he might pursue would require approvals that fell under my direct jurisdiction. Every client he hoped to attract would need regulatory guidance that I could provide or withhold based on technical merit and compliance requirements. Every business relationship he planned to develop would involve participants who recognized my professional identity and regulatory influence. The irony of this convergence extended beyond simple coincidence to represent fundamental misunderstanding of power dynamics within our family structure. Victoria's announcement of Jonathan's career transition was intended to highlight his entrepreneurial vision and business acumen while implicitly diminishing my contributions as supportive spouse rather than independent professional. The reality that his success in this new venture would depend entirely upon my regulatory decisions represented complete reversal of assumed family hierarchy and professional relationship dynamics. The strategic patience I had developed through years of regulatory experience had prepared me for this moment when underestimation would transform into recognition, when assumed limitation would reveal actual authority, and when family dynamics would require fundamental revision based on previously invisible professional realities. Dr. Margaret Chen Whitmore, Regional Regulatory Commissioner for Renewable Energy Development throughout New York State, was about to become visible within the Whitmore family social context. The housewife who had been dismissed for 30 years was about to demonstrate that the most powerful person in the family had been hiding in plain sight, maintaining professional authority that would determine the success or failure of her husband's new business venture. The Pearl anniversary celebration that had been planned as recognition of 30 years of marriage was about to become the stage for revelation that would transform every assumption about capability, contribution, and authority that had shaped family relationships since our wedding day. Sometimes the greatest victories belong to those who were never supposed to possess such power, and the most satisfying transformations occur when patient preparation meets perfect timing for undeniable demonstration of actual worth. The regulatory framework governing renewable energy development in New York State represented one of the most complex administrative structures in American environmental policy, encompassing federal compliance requirements, state legislative mandates, municipal zoning considerations, and private sector coordination across multiple industries. My position as Regional Regulatory Commissioner required orchestrating these interconnected systems while maintaining political independence, technical accuracy, and public accountability standards that affected billions of dollars in infrastructure investment annually. Each morning began with comprehensive briefings that synthesized overnight developments across dozens of active project files, emerging policy considerations, industry intelligence reports, and stakeholder communications that demanded immediate attention or strategic planning adjustments. The sophistication of this information management system had evolved over 5 years of regulatory experience into predictive analysis capabilities that anticipated challenges, identified opportunities, and optimized decision-making processes across multiple concurrent proceedings. The technical complexity of renewable energy projects required comprehensive understanding of engineering specifications, environmental impact assessments, grid integration requirements, financial structuring mechanisms, and long-term sustainability considerations that intersected with regulatory frameworks at federal, state, and local levels. My engineering background provided foundation for technical evaluation, while regulatory experience had developed expertise in policy implementation, stakeholder management, and political coordination that exceeded many industry participants' capabilities. Solar development projects alone involved coordination between property developers, equipment manufacturers, electrical contractors, utility companies, environmental consultants, financial institutions, legal advisors, and community stakeholders whose interests often conflicted in ways that required sophisticated negotiation and problem-solving capabilities. Wind energy developments added aviation safety considerations, wildlife protection requirements, acoustic impact assessments, and transmission infrastructure coordination that multiplied complexity exponentially. The strategic positioning required for effective regulatory leadership demanded comprehensive understanding of political dynamics, industry relationships, public opinion trends, and economic factors that influenced policy development and implementation success. Commissioners who focused exclusively on technical evaluation without considering broader strategic implications typically struggled to achieve sustainable outcomes that served public interests while maintaining industry cooperation and political support necessary for long-term effectiveness. My regulatory authority extended far beyond simple project approval or rejection decisions to encompass policy development, enforcement mechanisms, industry guidance, and strategic planning that shaped renewable energy development throughout the region. The Emergency Powers Act granted commissioners extraordinary discretion during energy supply emergencies, authority that could override local zoning restrictions, expedite permitting processes, and coordinate multi-agency responses to infrastructure challenges or natural disasters. The precedent-setting nature of regulatory decisions created ripple effects throughout the industry that influenced investment patterns, technology adoption rates, and strategic planning by developers, utilities, and financial institutions whose business models depended upon predictable regulatory frameworks. A single commissioner decision could enhance or diminish market confidence in specific technologies, geographic regions, or development approaches that affected hundreds of millions of dollars in private capital allocation. Industry participants had learned to monitor commissioner statements, regulatory guidance documents, and procedural modifications with intensity typically reserved for Federal Reserve monetary policy announcements. My published opinions on emerging technologies, environmental protection standards, or community engagement requirements became industry benchmarks that influenced project design, business strategy development, and investment decision-making across the renewable energy sector. The enforcement mechanisms available through regulatory authority included financial penalties, permit revocations, compliance monitoring requirements, and public disclosure mandates that could severely impact company operations, stock valuations, and industry reputation. These tools required careful application that balanced public protection with industry development while maintaining due process standards and political accountability that preserved regulatory credibility and effectiveness. Professional recognition within the regulatory community had developed through consistent demonstration of technical competence, political independence, and strategic thinking that achieved balanced outcomes serving multiple stakeholder interests. Peer commissioners, industry leaders, environmental advocates, and political officials had learned to respect decisions that reflected comprehensive analysis, stakeholder consultation, and long-term strategic consideration, rather than short-term political expedience or industry pressure. The renewable energy consulting market that Jonathan planned to enter represented precisely the professional ecosystem where my regulatory influence proved most significant and visible. Consultants in this sector provided services that included project development advice, regulatory strategy guidance, stakeholder coordination, and compliance management that required intimate understanding of commissioner preferences, regulatory precedents, and policy development trends. Successful consulting practices typically maintained close relationships with regulatory staff, comprehensive knowledge of procedural requirements, and strategic insights about commission priorities that enabled effective client representation during permitting processes, compliance reviews, and enforcement proceedings. The most valuable consultants possessed insider understanding of regulatory decision-making patterns, commissioner communication preferences, and procedural nuances that could significantly influence project outcomes. Client development within renewable energy consulting depended heavily upon demonstrated track record of regulatory success, industry relationships, and technical expertise that justified premium pricing for specialized knowledge and strategic guidance. New consultants typically struggled to establish credibility without extensive industry experience, regulatory relationships, and successful project portfolios that provided evidence of competence and effectiveness in navigating complex approval processes. The competitive landscape included established consulting firms with decades of regulatory experience, former commission staff who leveraged government expertise into private sector success, and specialized technical consultants who combined engineering knowledge with regulatory understanding to provide comprehensive project development services. Market entry barriers included reputation development, relationship building, technical certification requirements, and client acquisition challenges that typically required substantial investment and extended development periods. Jonathan's accounting background provided financial analysis capabilities that could prove valuable for project evaluation and investment structuring, yet lacked the technical expertise, regulatory knowledge, and industry relationships that distinguished successful renewable energy consultants from generalist business advisors. His assumption that accounting skills would translate directly to consulting success reflected fundamental misunderstanding of industry requirements and competitive dynamics. The maintenance of dual professional identities required sophisticated understanding of social psychology, organizational behavior, and strategic communication that prevented inadvertent disclosure while maintaining authentic relationships in both professional and family contexts. This balancing act had developed into comprehensive skill set that proved valuable for regulatory leadership that required managing multiple stakeholder relationships with competing interests and conflicting expectations. Family social events provided excellent training ground for developing diplomatic communication skills, strategic information management, and relationship maintenance capabilities that translated directly to regulatory leadership responsibilities. The ability to navigate conversations without revealing sensitive information while maintaining genuine engagement had become second nature through decades of practice in managing Victoria's social expectations and Jonathan's professional networking activities. Professional colleagues understood the necessity of maintaining separation between regulatory responsibilities and family business interests, yet remained unaware of specific family dynamics that made this separation particularly important for maintaining commission independence and credibility. Industry participants who knew my regulatory identity assumed my family supported and understood my professional responsibilities, rather than remaining largely ignorant of my actual authority and influence. The strategic value of professional invisibility within family contexts extended beyond simple conflict avoidance to provide comprehensive intelligence-gathering opportunities that enhanced my understanding of industry perspectives, business strategies, and market dynamics. Social conversations often revealed information about company strategies, investor preferences, and development challenges that provided valuable context for regulatory decision-making without creating appearance of impropriety or insider information concerns. The psychological discipline required for maintaining professional concealment had strengthened analytical capabilities, strategic thinking skills, and diplomatic communication techniques that proved invaluable for regulatory leadership that demanded careful consideration of political implications, stakeholder reactions, and long-term strategic consequences of policy decisions and enforcement actions. 5 years of regulatory service had established comprehensive professional reputation that extended throughout the renewable energy sector and influenced policy development at state and federal levels. Industry associations regularly requested my participation in policy working groups, technical committees, and strategic planning initiatives that shaped regulatory frameworks and implementation strategies across multiple jurisdictions. Conference speaking engagements, professional publication contributions, and policy consultation opportunities had created visibility throughout the national renewable energy community that provided access to emerging trends, innovative technologies, and strategic insights that enhanced my effectiveness as Regional Regulatory Commissioner. This professional network included academics, industry leaders, policy experts, and international colleagues who provided comprehensive perspective on global energy transition challenges and opportunities. The academic community recognized my contributions through visiting fellowship opportunities, research collaboration invitations, and peer review responsibilities that maintained connection with cutting-edge research, while providing practical regulatory perspective that enhanced academic understanding of policy implementation challenges. University partnerships provided access to graduate student research, faculty expertise, and laboratory capabilities that supported regulatory analysis and policy development activities. Federal agency coordination required regular interaction with Department of Energy officials, Environmental Protection Agency representatives, and Federal Energy Regulatory Commission staff, who recognized my expertise and frequently consulted my insights on regional implementation challenges, policy effectiveness assessments, and strategic planning considerations that influenced national energy transition strategies. International recognition had developed through participation in global renewable energy conferences, policy exchange programs, and bilateral cooperation initiatives that provided comparative perspective on regulatory approaches while establishing relationships with international colleagues who faced similar energy transition challenges in their respective jurisdictions. The convergence of circumstances surrounding our Pearl Anniversary celebration represented perfect opportunity for demonstrating the comprehensive professional authority that had developed while remaining invisible within family contexts. Jonathan's career transition into renewable energy consulting would require navigation of regulatory frameworks where my authority proved decisive for project success, client relationships, and business development opportunities. The strategic patience that had enabled maintenance of dual identities for 5 years had prepared me for this moment when professional revelation would serve both personal satisfaction and broader educational purposes about assumptions, recognition, and the complex realities of professional women's experiences in contemporary society. The timing provided optimal circumstances for demonstration rather than simple announcement of professional identity and regulatory authority. Victoria's planned announcement regarding Jonathan's career transition would create dramatic context that highlighted the irony of family assumptions, while providing educational opportunity about the dangers of underestimating people based on traditional role expectations or social assumptions. The contrast between her dismissive attitude and the reality of my professional authority would provide compelling illustration of how unconscious bias creates blind spots that prevent accurate assessment of individual capabilities and contributions. The renewable energy sector provided ideal stage for this revelation because it represented emerging industry where traditional relationship patterns and established networks were evolving rapidly, creating opportunities for new participants while rewarding expertise, innovation, and strategic thinking, rather than simply reinforcing existing power structures or social hierarchies. Dr. Margaret Chen Whitmore had spent 5 years building regulatory authority that could make or break renewable energy consulting careers, while Margaret Whitmore had spent 30 years being dismissed as conventional housewife, whose contributions were limited to domestic support and social obligations. The convergence of these identities would demonstrate that the most powerful people often hide in plain sight, maintaining professional excellence, while others remain blind to capabilities that exceed their expectations and challenge their assumptions about appropriate roles and individual potential. Professional dismissal within family contexts carries psychological weight that differs fundamentally from workplace discrimination or social prejudice. When the people who should know you most intimately consistently underestimate your capabilities and contributions, the impact penetrates layers of identity and self-worth that workplace dynamics cannot reach. Over 30 years of marriage into the Whitmore family, I had learned to navigate systematic diminishment that came disguised as protective concern, traditional values, and family stability. Victoria Whitmore's approach to maintaining family hierarchy operated through sophisticated psychological mechanisms that reinforced social boundaries while maintaining plausible deniability about intentional disrespect or discrimination. Her comments about my contributions typically carried undertones of condescension wrapped in language that appeared supportive or appreciative to casual observers, while delivering clear messages about my perceived limitations and appropriate role within family structures. During dinner parties at the Whitmore estate, Victoria would introduce me to prominent guests as Jonathan's wife, who helped manage household responsibilities while he focused on building his accounting practice. This characterization reduced 3 decades of professional development, advanced education, and regulatory achievement to domestic support functions that reinforced traditional gender roles, while positioning Jonathan as the family's primary source of professional accomplishment and social status. The language patterns Victoria employed consistently emphasized my derivative rather than independent identity within family and social contexts. I was Jonathan's wife rather than Dr. Margaret Chen Whitmore, someone who supported his career rather than pursuing my own professional objectives, a family member who contributed through domestic management rather than external professional achievement. These linguistic frameworks shaped social perceptions, while reinforcing psychological boundaries that limited recognition of my actual capabilities and accomplishments. Social gatherings provided regular opportunities for Victoria to demonstrate her assessment of family member contributions through strategic attention allocation and conversation management. She would engage extensively with Jonathan about his business development, client relationships, and professional challenges while redirecting conversations away from my work or treating my professional activities as hobbies rather than serious career commitments requiring expertise and generating significant responsibility. Jonathan's complicity in maintaining these dismissive dynamics reflected complex psychological factors that included both genuine ignorance about my regulatory responsibilities and willful blindness to information that might complicate his own professional and social relationships. His accounting practice benefited significantly from Victoria's social connections and business network, relationships that provided client referrals, strategic partnerships, and professional opportunities that contributed substantially to his business success. The maintenance of family harmony required careful navigation of Victoria's expectations and preferences regarding appropriate roles and behavior patterns for family members. Jonathan had learned over 30 years that challenging his mother's assessments or expectations typically resulted in social tension, reduced family support, and potential damage to business relationships that depended upon Victoria's influence and connections within Connecticut's professional and social networks. During family discussions about career achievements, business challenges, or professional development, Jonathan would inadvertently reinforce Victoria's dismissive attitudes by focusing attention on his own professional activities while treating my work as background support that enabled his primary contributions. These conversational patterns reflected ingrained assumptions about family priorities and individual importance that had developed over decades of social conditioning and expectation management. The psychological impact of sustained dismissal from family members created internal conflicts that workplace achievement could not fully resolve. Professional recognition from industry colleagues, regulatory peers, and policy experts provided validation of my expertise and contributions, yet family dismissal continued to challenge self-perception and confidence in ways that affected personal relationships and life satisfaction beyond professional contexts. The compartmentalization required to maintain dual identities had created psychological distance between professional achievement and personal fulfillment that sometimes left me questioning whether external recognition truly reflected internal worth or simply represented successful performance of expected roles within different social contexts. This uncertainty reflected the complex ways that systematic dismissal can undermine confidence even when objective evidence contradicts negative assessments. The maintenance of professional secrecy within family contexts created profound isolation that compounded the psychological impact of dismissive treatment. While regulatory colleagues recognized my expertise and sought my consultation on complex policy matters, family members remained unaware of these professional relationships and their significance for industry development and public policy outcomes. Professional achievements that would typically provide opportunities for family celebration and recognition remained invisible within family contexts, due to the strategic necessity of maintaining separation between regulatory responsibilities and personal relationships. Successful policy implementations, industry recognition awards, and professional advancement opportunities became private victories rather than shared family accomplishments. The inability to share professional challenges, strategic decisions, and policy outcomes with family members eliminated important sources of emotional support and practical guidance that typically help professionals navigate complex career responsibilities. Regulatory decision-making often involved difficult choices between competing public interests, stakeholder pressures, and political considerations that would benefit from trusted personal consultation and emotional support. Social events where I encountered industry colleagues while maintaining family anonymity created particularly challenging psychological navigation requirements. Attending cocktail parties where renewable energy executives recognized my regulatory authority while family members remained oblivious to these professional relationships required constant attention to conversation management, introduction protocols, and strategic information control that proved emotionally exhausting over time. The development of authentic friendships became complicated by the necessity of maintaining professional secrecy while building genuine personal connections. Close relationships typically require honest communication about professional responsibilities, career challenges, and life priorities that I could not fully share without revealing regulatory identity and potentially compromising family relationship strategies that had required years to develop and maintain. Financial contributions to family stability and lifestyle maintenance remained systematically undervalued, despite regulatory compensation that significantly exceeded Jonathan's accounting practice income. The complexity of government salary structures, benefit packages, and professional expense arrangements made actual compensation levels difficult to assess without detailed financial analysis that neither Jonathan nor Victoria had undertaken during my 5 years of regulatory service. My decision to maintain separate financial accounts for regulatory compensation, while contributing specific amounts to family expenses, created an appearance of modest financial contribution that reinforced assumptions about limited career significance and earning potential. This financial arrangement served multiple strategic purposes that included asset protection, conflict of interest prevention, and maintenance of professional independence that regulatory ethics requirements demanded. The substantial financial contributions I made to children's education expenses, family travel costs, and household maintenance remained largely invisible due to indirect payment mechanisms and strategic account management that prevented clear attribution of major expenses to my professional income. David and Sarah's private school tuition, study abroad programs, and graduate school expenses received significant support from my regulatory compensation without family recognition of these contribution sources. Property investments, retirement planning contributions, and insurance coverage decisions reflected my professional financial planning expertise and access to government benefit programs that provided substantial long-term financial advantages for family security and wealth accumulation. These strategic financial decisions required sophisticated understanding of tax implications, investment strategies, and risk management approaches that exceeded typical household financial management capabilities. The economic impact of maintaining dual professional identities included substantial professional expenses for travel, continuing education, industry conference participation, and professional association memberships that regulatory ethics requirements and career development necessities demanded. These professional investment costs remained invisible to family members, while contributing significantly to my regulatory effectiveness and industry influence. 30 years of systematic underestimation had created psychological patterns that affected self-perception, relationship expectations, and professional confidence in ways that extended beyond immediate family contexts. The internalization of dismissive treatment could manifest in professional settings through excessive preparation, risk aversion, and validation-seeking behaviors that reflected underlying uncertainty about actual competence, despite objective evidence of exceptional performance. The development of hypervigilance regarding potential criticism or dismissal had become automatic psychological response that influenced decision-making, communication patterns, and strategic planning in both professional and personal contexts. This defensive positioning sometimes prevented optimal outcomes by prioritizing protection from negative evaluation over maximizing positive impact, or achieving ambitious objectives that might invite scrutiny or challenge. Professional relationships occasionally suffered from overcompensation behaviors that reflected internal struggles with family-based dismissal patterns. The need to demonstrate competence and earn respect sometimes resulted in communication approaches that appeared overly formal or defensive to colleagues who already recognized my expertise and did not require additional evidence of professional qualification or authority. The emotional labor required to maintain composure and professional effectiveness while managing family-based psychological challenges consumed substantial energy that could otherwise support career advancement, personal development, and relationship-building activities. This internal resource allocation represented hidden cost of maintaining dual identity strategies that served important strategic purposes while creating personal sustainability challenges. The development of therapeutic coping strategies had become necessary for managing psychological impacts of sustained dismissal, while maintaining professional performance standards and family relationship obligations. These self-care approaches included professional counseling, meditation practices, physical exercise routines, and creative activities that provided emotional outlets and perspective maintenance during particularly challenging periods. Despite the substantial psychological challenges created by systematic family dismissal, this experience had generated valuable capabilities that enhanced my regulatory effectiveness and professional leadership skills. The necessity of maintaining professional excellence while managing emotional challenges had developed resilience, strategic thinking abilities, and diplomatic communication skills that proved invaluable for complex regulatory leadership responsibilities. The experience of being consistently underestimated had created comprehensive understanding of bias patterns, psychological dynamics, and social mechanisms that influenced professional relationships and decision-making processes. This insight proved valuable for identifying and addressing similar dynamics within regulatory proceedings, stakeholder consultations, and policy development activities that required careful attention to equity, representation, and inclusive decision-making approaches. The development of emotional regulation skills necessary for managing family dismissal had enhanced my capacity for remaining calm and analytical during challenging regulatory proceedings, contentious stakeholder meetings, and high-pressure policy negotiations that required clear thinking and strategic communication, despite intense political pressure and personal criticism. The strategic patience required for maintaining long-term dual identity management had developed comprehensive planning capabilities, risk assessment skills, and tactical flexibility that proved essential for regulatory leadership that demanded careful consideration of multiple variables, unintended consequences, and long-term strategic implications of policy decisions and enforcement actions. The empathy and perspective developed through personal experience with systematic underestimation had enhanced my sensitivity to similar dynamics within regulatory processes, industry relationships, and policy development activities that could inadvertently exclude or dismiss valuable perspectives from participants who might not fit traditional expectations about expertise, authority, or contribution patterns. 30 years of accumulated dismissal had created perfect psychological conditions for transformational revelation that would demonstrate the extraordinary gap between family perceptions and professional reality. The systematic underestimation that had caused substantial personal pain would become the foundation for dramatic demonstration of actual capabilities and achievements that exceeded family expectations by orders of magnitude. The strategic patience developed through managing family dismissal had prepared me for this moment when professional revelation would serve both personal vindication and broader educational purposes about the dangers of systematic underestimation and the complex realities faced by professional women who navigate traditional family expectations while building extraordinary careers. The emotional strength forged through 30 years of managing psychological challenges while maintaining professional excellence had created internal resources necessary for handling the complex dynamics that would emerge when family assumptions encountered undeniable evidence of regulatory authority and industry influence that contradicted every previous assessment of my capabilities and contributions. The comprehensive understanding of bias patterns and social dynamics developed through personal experience with dismissal had provided strategic insights that would prove valuable for managing family relationship changes, community reactions, and professional adjustments that would follow revelation of my regulatory identity and the implications this would have for Jonathan's career plans. Dr. Margaret Chen Whitmore had spent 30 years being systematically underestimated while building regulatory authority that controlled the success or failure of renewable energy development throughout New York State. The weight of accumulated dismissal was about to become the foundation for extraordinary revelation that would transform every assumption about capability, contribution, and authority that had shaped family relationships since our wedding day. Sometimes the greatest strength emerges from surviving the deepest underestimation, and the most powerful transformations occur when patient endurance meets perfect opportunity for undeniable demonstration of actual worth. The renewable energy sector throughout New York State operated through interconnected networks of dependency that remained largely invisible to participants who focused exclusively on their immediate business interests, without understanding the broader regulatory ecosystem that enabled their success. Over 5 years as Regional Regulatory Commissioner, I had positioned myself at the nexus of these dependency networks, while maintaining complete anonymity within the family and social contexts where participants operated without recognizing my regulatory authority. The morning briefings that shaped my regulatory decision-making included comprehensive intelligence gathering about industry participants, their financial backing, strategic partnerships, and development priorities that would be directly affected by policy decisions and enforcement actions under my jurisdiction. This intelligence network provided real-time awareness of market dynamics, competitive relationships, and strategic positioning that informed regulatory approaches while remaining completely unknown to family members who assumed I handled basic administrative tasks for a small consulting firm. Major renewable energy developers throughout the region had learned to monitor my published decisions, policy statements, and regulatory guidance documents with the intensity typically reserved for Federal Reserve monetary policy announcements. A single commissioner opinion on emerging technologies, environmental protection standards, or community engagement requirements could influence hundreds of millions of dollars in private investment while shaping industry development patterns for years to come. The precedent-setting nature of regulatory decisions created cascading effects throughout investment markets, technology adoption cycles, and business strategy development that extended far beyond immediate project approvals or rejections. Venture capital firms, private equity investors, and institutional lenders had incorporated my regulatory philosophy and decision-making patterns into their due diligence processes and risk assessment frameworks that determined capital allocation across the renewable energy sector. Financial institutions that provided project financing relied heavily upon regulatory predictability and commissioner consistency to evaluate investment risks and structure lending arrangements that supported renewable energy development. My track record of technical competence, stakeholder engagement, and balanced decision-making had enhanced market confidence that translated directly to lower borrowing costs, increased investment activity, and accelerated project development throughout the region. The renewable energy consulting market that Jonathan intended to enter existed entirely within the regulatory ecosystem, where my authority proved decisive for client success, business development opportunities, and competitive positioning. Successful consultants in this sector provided value primarily through their ability to navigate regulatory processes, anticipate commissioner preferences, and achieve favorable outcomes for clients whose projects required complex approvals and ongoing compliance management. Industry participants had developed sophisticated understanding of my regulatory priorities, procedural preferences, and decision-making patterns through careful analysis of published decisions, public hearing transcripts, and policy guidance documents that revealed strategic insights about approaches most likely to achieve successful outcomes. This regulatory intelligence represented crucial competitive advantage for consultants who could provide clients with actionable guidance about presentation strategies, technical requirements, and stakeholder engagement approaches. The most successful renewable energy consulting practices maintained comprehensive databases of regulatory precedents, commissioner statements, and procedural modifications that enabled predictive analysis of likely outcomes for proposed projects and strategic initiatives. These information systems required continuous monitoring, analytical expertise, and strategic interpretation that distinguished premium consulting services from generalist business advisory offerings that lacked specialized regulatory knowledge. Client acquisition within renewable energy consulting depended heavily upon demonstrated track record of regulatory success, established relationships with commission staff, and reputation for effectiveness in achieving favorable outcomes during complex approval processes and enforcement proceedings. New market entrants typically struggled to establish credibility without extensive documentation of successful project outcomes and client testimonials that validated their regulatory expertise and strategic capabilities. The competitive landscape included former commission staff members who leveraged government experience into lucrative consulting practices, established engineering firms that had developed regulatory specialization over decades of project development, and boutique advisory practices that combined technical expertise with political intelligence to provide comprehensive strategic guidance for major infrastructure investments. The business leaders, investors, and development professionals who would become Jonathan's potential clients operated with sophisticated understanding of regulatory requirements and commissioner authority within their professional contexts, while remaining completely unaware of these dynamics within their personal and social relationships. This compartmentalization reflected broader psychological patterns that separated professional competence recognition from personal relationship assumptions in ways that created significant blind spots about individual capabilities and influence. Corporate executives who regularly appeared before the Energy Authority Commission for major project approvals treated regulatory proceedings with appropriate seriousness and preparation while potentially socializing with Commission family members in completely different contexts without recognizing these connections. The psychological separation between professional and personal assessment created opportunities for extraordinary irony when regulatory authority intersected with social assumptions about individual importance and capability. Industry networking events regularly brought together developers, consultants, financial professionals, and regulatory officials in social settings where professional relationships mixed with personal interactions in ways that could reveal or conceal individual authority and influence depending upon introduction protocols and conversation management approaches. These social dynamics provided excellent training ground for strategic identity management that served regulatory independence while creating opportunities for intelligence gathering about industry perspectives and strategic priorities. The assumption patterns that governed social interaction within Connecticut professional circles reflected traditional hierarchies and role expectations that often prevented accurate assessment of individual capabilities and contributions, particularly for women whose professional achievements occurred within sectors that remained male-dominated despite increasing female participation in technical and leadership positions. The psychological comfort of familiar assumptions about appropriate roles and individual capabilities often proved more appealing than complex realities that challenged established social hierarchies or required revision of existing relationship patterns. Family members and social acquaintances typically preferred simple explanations about professional activities rather than detailed understanding that might reveal uncomfortable truths about their own limitations in recognizing competence that existed outside traditional expectations. The renewable energy development sector represented a multi-billion-dollar market that depended entirely upon regulatory approval processes, ongoing compliance management, and favorable policy environments that commissioners like myself controlled through our authority over permitting decisions, enforcement actions, and regulatory guidance development. This economic dependency created extraordinary leverage for commissioners who maintained technical competence, political independence, and strategic vision that served broader public interests while enabling appropriate private sector development. Project financing arrangements typically included regulatory risk assessment components that evaluated commissioner track records, policy stability factors, and procedural predictability measures that influenced lending terms, investment structures, and development timelines that determined project viability and profitability. My reputation for thorough analysis, stakeholder engagement, and balanced decision-making had contributed to favorable financing conditions that reduced development costs while accelerating deployment of renewable energy infrastructure throughout the region. The insurance markets that provided coverage for renewable energy projects incorporated regulatory risk factors into premium calculations and coverage determinations that reflected commissioner consistency, policy stability, and enforcement predictability that affected project economics and investment returns. Regulatory commissioners who maintained professional competence and political independence typically generated market confidence that translated to improved project financing conditions and reduced operational risk premiums. Technology adoption patterns within renewable energy development reflected regulatory preferences and policy priorities that commissioners established through guidance documents, precedent decisions, and strategic communication about preferred approaches to environmental protection, community engagement, and technical performance standards. My technical background and policy expertise had influenced industry adoption of advanced technologies and best practices that enhanced environmental outcomes while improving economic performance. Market consolidation trends within renewable energy development reflected regulatory environments that favored experienced developers with demonstrated track records of successful project completion and ongoing compliance management. My emphasis on technical competence and operational excellence had contributed to industry maturation that eliminated marginal participants while rewarding developers who invested in professional capabilities and stakeholder relationship management. Individual regulatory decisions created network effects throughout the renewable energy ecosystem that influenced business strategies, investment allocation patterns, and technology development priorities in ways that extended far beyond immediate project approvals or policy implementations. These cascading effects represented multiplicative impact of regulatory authority that made commissioner positions extraordinarily influential for industry development and market evolution. Environmental consulting firms throughout the region had adapted their service offerings and technical capabilities based upon my published guidance about preferred approaches to ecological impact assessment, community stakeholder engagement, and long-term environmental monitoring that enhanced project approval prospects while ensuring appropriate protection of natural resources and community interests. Legal practices specializing in renewable energy development had incorporated my regulatory philosophy and procedural preferences into their client counseling approaches and strategic advice offerings that reflected deep understanding of commissioner priorities and decision-making patterns that improved client outcomes while reducing approval timelines and compliance costs. Equipment manufacturers and technology providers had modified their product development strategies and market positioning approaches based upon my technical preferences and performance standards that influenced procurement decisions, design specifications, and operational requirements for renewable energy installations throughout the regulatory jurisdiction. Financial advisory services that supported renewable energy development had integrated my regulatory track record and policy priorities into their risk assessment frameworks and investment recommendation models that guided capital allocation decisions, while helping clients optimize project structures and development strategies for favorable regulatory treatment and successful long-term operations. The renewable energy industry participants who would potentially become Jonathan's consulting clients had developed professional relationships and business strategies that depended upon regulatory frameworks and commissioner authority that remained completely invisible within their personal and social contexts, where they might encounter my family members without recognizing these professional connections and dependencies. This separation between professional recognition and personal invisibility created systemic vulnerabilities that could dramatically affect industry relationships, business development opportunities, and strategic planning effectiveness, when regulatory identity became visible within social and family contexts that had previously operated independently of professional considerations. The comfortable assumptions that governed family and social interactions could collapse rapidly when confronted with undeniable evidence of professional authority and industry influence that contradicted established expectations about individual capabilities and appropriate role boundaries. These psychological adjustments typically required substantial emotional processing and relationship renegotiation that could affect both personal and professional dynamics in unpredictable ways. The business development strategies that Jonathan planned to employ within renewable energy consulting assumed regulatory processes operated independently of his personal and family relationships, an assumption that would prove fundamentally incorrect when his wife's regulatory authority became visible within the professional contexts where he hoped to establish consulting practice and build client relationships. Industry participants who had maintained professional respect for my regulatory authority while remaining unaware of family connections would face complex adjustments when personal and professional contexts converged in ways that challenged their established relationship management approaches and strategic positioning within both social and business networks. The convergence of circumstances surrounding our Pearl Anniversary celebration represented perfect opportunity for demonstrating how professional dependencies that had remained invisible within family contexts would become undeniably visible when Jonathan's career transition forced intersection between his business development plans and my regulatory authority over the precise market sector he intended to enter. The strategic patience that had enabled 5 years of dual identity management had positioned me optimally for this moment, when family assumptions would encounter professional realities that revealed the comprehensive gap between perceived limitations and actual influence within the renewable energy sector that controlled billions of dollars in infrastructure investment and policy development. The network effects of regulatory authority that had shaped industry development patterns throughout New York State would become personally relevant for family members who had systematically underestimated my professional capabilities while depending unknowingly upon market confidence and investment conditions that my regulatory decisions had created and maintained through consistent technical competence and strategic leadership. The ecosystem of hidden dependencies that supported renewable energy development throughout the region would become visible within family contexts that had operated under assumptions about individual importance and professional influence that bore no relationship to actual authority and industry recognition that determined market success and business viability within Jonathan's chosen consulting sector. Dr. Margaret Chen Whitmore had spent 5 years building regulatory influence that shaped investment markets, technology adoption patterns, and business success throughout the renewable energy sector, while remaining completely invisible within family contexts that dismissed her contributions as domestic support, rather than recognizing her authority over the precise professional ecosystem where Jonathan hoped to establish consulting practice and build client relationships that would depend entirely upon favorable regulatory treatment from his systematically underestimated wife. The Pearl Anniversary celebration had been planned for 18 months, with meticulous attention to detail that reflected Victoria Whitmore's expertise in orchestrating social events that demonstrated family prominence while reinforcing established hierarchies. The Westchester Country Club ballroom had been reserved, caterers selected from Manhattan's most prestigious firms, and guest lists curated to include Connecticut's political and business elite, alongside extended family members from across New England. Victoria had insisted upon personally managing every aspect of the celebration, from floral arrangements that complemented the club's historic architecture to menu selections that accommodated various dietary preferences while maintaining elegant presentation standards. Her approach to event planning reflected decades of experience in creating social gatherings that served multiple purposes beyond simple celebration, providing networking opportunities for business development while reinforcing social status and family reputation within Connecticut's established professional circles. The decision to combine our anniversary celebration with Jonathan's career announcement represented strategic timing that Victoria believed would maximize impact for both personal milestone recognition and professional transition support. She had coordinated with several prominent guests who possessed renewable energy industry connections, positioning the announcement as opportunity for immediate business development discussions that could accelerate Jonathan's consulting practice establishment. The guest list included renewable energy investors, development company executives, and policy consultants whose presence would provide Jonathan with networking opportunities that typically required months of business development effort to arrange independently. Victoria's social influence had enabled access to decision-makers who could provide immediate validation for Jonathan's consulting capabilities while potentially generating client relationships that might establish his practice foundation. The timing coordination had required careful orchestration to ensure maximum attendance from key industry participants whose schedules reflected the demanding travel requirements and strategic priorities that characterized renewable energy sector leadership positions. Victoria had leveraged personal relationships developed over decades of social and charitable activities to secure attendance commitments from individuals whose presence would validate Jonathan's career transition, while providing immediate access to potential client relationships. Saturday morning began with unusual tension that reflected the convergence of professional and personal circumstances that neither Jonathan nor Victoria could have anticipated when planning the anniversary celebration 18 months earlier. The morning news included coverage of renewable energy policy developments that directly affected several projects under my regulatory review, developments that required careful analysis, and strategic response planning that consumed substantial attention despite the celebration preparation demands. The regulatory briefing materials that arrived through secure communication channels included intelligence about industry participant activities, investment decisions, and strategic positioning changes that would directly affect several celebration guests who remained unaware of my regulatory authority over their business interests. This convergence of professional and personal contexts created extraordinary opportunity for strategic intelligence gathering while maintaining operational security that protected regulatory independence and decision-making integrity. Jonathan's morning preparation ritual included final review of consulting practice marketing materials, business development strategy documents, and industry research summaries that he intended to reference during networking conversations with celebration guests. His confidence reflected months of preparation and strategic planning that had been conducted without any awareness of my regulatory authority over the renewable energy sector, where he hoped to establish consulting practice and build client relationships. The irony of his preparation efforts became particularly apparent as I reviewed regulatory files that included several companies represented among celebration guests. Companies whose development projects and strategic initiatives were directly affected by policy decisions and enforcement actions under my jurisdiction. Jonathan's business development research had identified several potential clients whose success or failure in renewable energy development depended entirely upon favorable regulatory treatment from his systematically underestimated wife. Victoria's final preparation activities included coordination with catering staff, floral arrangement confirmation, and guest reception logistics that reflected her expertise in managing complex social events, while maintaining attention to detail that ensured flawless execution of carefully orchestrated celebration plans. Her confidence in managing these arrangements contrasted sharply with her complete ignorance about the professional dynamics that would transform the evening's significance far beyond her intended scope. The celebration guest list represented comprehensive cross-section of renewable energy industry leadership that included developers, investors, consultants, and policy advocates, whose professional success depended directly upon regulatory frameworks and commissioner decisions that I controlled through my authority over permitting processes, enforcement actions, and policy guidance development. This convergence created extraordinary opportunity for strategic intelligence gathering, while maintaining professional anonymity that protected regulatory independence. Among the confirmed attendees, Harrison Bedford represented Northeastern Solar Development Corporation, a company whose proposed utility-scale installation had encountered significant environmental compliance challenges during my regulatory review process. Bedford's attendance at our anniversary celebration reflected Victoria's social connections, rather than any awareness of regulatory relationships that could affect his company's project approval prospects and investment timeline success. Patricia Morrison, senior partner at Morrison & Associates Energy Consulting, had built her practice reputation through claimed expertise in navigating regulatory approval processes and achieving favorable outcomes for renewable energy developers. Morrison's attendance provided opportunity to observe her professional approaches and client relationship management techniques while maintaining anonymity that prevented recognition of my regulatory authority over the projects where she provided consulting services. The presence of venture capital partners from Greenfield Investment Management created particularly interesting intelligence gathering opportunities, since their portfolio companies included several renewable energy developers whose projects required regulatory approvals that fell directly under my jurisdiction. These investors made funding decisions based partly upon regulatory risk assessments and commissioner track records that they analyzed without awareness that the decision-maker attended their social functions as dismissed family member. Environmental advocacy representatives, including Coalition for Sustainable Energy Director Sarah Chen, would provide valuable perspectives on stakeholder concerns and strategic priorities that influenced their organizations, approaches to regulatory proceeding participation, and policy development advocacy. These interactions offered insights about community engagement strategies and environmental protection priorities that informed my regulatory decision-making while remaining professionally invisible within social contexts. The maintenance of dual identity required sophisticated psychological compartmentalization that enabled authentic engagement in social contexts, while protecting professional information and regulatory independence that ethics requirements demanded. This balancing act had developed over 5 years into comprehensive skill set that proved valuable for managing complex stakeholder relationships and strategic communication challenges that characterized regulatory leadership responsibilities. The social interaction protocols necessary for maintaining professional anonymity had become automatic psychological responses that enabled natural conversation management while preventing inadvertent disclosure of regulatory authority or industry expertise that could compromise operational security. These communication skills had enhanced my diplomatic capabilities and strategic thinking approaches that proved valuable for managing contentious regulatory proceedings and political coordination challenges. The psychological discipline required for managing dual identity contexts had strengthened analytical capabilities, emotional regulation skills, and strategic patience that enhanced regulatory effectiveness during complex decision-making processes and stakeholder engagement activities. The experience of maintaining professional competence while managing systematic underestimation had developed resilience and strategic thinking abilities that proved invaluable for regulatory leadership that demanded careful consideration of multiple variables and unintended consequences. The anticipation of professional revelation created psychological excitement that reflected 5 years of strategic patience and 30 years of systematic underestimation that would finally encounter undeniable demonstration of actual authority and industry influence. This anticipation was balanced by recognition of complex relationship adjustments and social dynamics that would emerge when professional and personal contexts converged in ways that challenged established assumptions and expectation patterns. The preparation for managing revelation consequences required careful consideration of timing, presentation approaches, and relationship management strategies that would optimize positive outcomes while minimizing unnecessary conflict or social disruption that could affect ongoing professional effectiveness and family relationship stability. Jonathan's consulting practice development strategy reflected months of market research, competitive analysis, and business planning that had been conducted without any awareness of my regulatory authority over the renewable energy sector, where he hoped to establish client relationships and build professional reputation. His confidence in market entry prospects reflected fundamental misunderstanding of regulatory dynamics and industry relationship patterns that would determine his consulting practice success or failure. The marketing materials Jonathan had developed emphasized his accounting expertise, financial analysis capabilities, and business strategy consulting experience as qualifications for renewable energy sector advisory services. These materials reflected genuine professional competence within accounting and business consulting, while demonstrating limited understanding of regulatory requirements, industry technical standards, and stakeholder relationship management approaches that distinguished successful renewable energy consultants from generalist business advisors. Client acquisition strategies that Jonathan intended to implement included networking with industry participants, demonstrating financial analysis expertise, and leveraging family social connections to establish credibility and generate referral relationships. These approaches reflected standard business development practices while ignoring the regulatory expertise, technical knowledge, and commission relationship management capabilities that represented primary value sources for successful renewable energy consulting practices. The competitive landscape analysis that informed Jonathan's market entry planning had identified established consulting firms and former government officials as primary competitors, while underestimating the regulatory relationship advantages and industry intelligence capabilities that distinguished premium consulting services from generalist advisory offerings. His business plan reflected optimism about market opportunities without adequate recognition of entry barriers and relationship requirements that characterized renewable energy consulting success. The financial projections that supported Jonathan's career transition reflected assumptions about consulting fee structures, client acquisition timelines, and market demand patterns that demonstrated limited understanding of regulatory consultation value propositions and competitive positioning requirements within specialized energy sector advisory markets. Victoria's plan for announcing Jonathan's career transition during the anniversary celebration represented careful orchestration, designed to maximize networking impact while providing immediate validation for his consulting practice establishment. Her timing strategy reflected decades of experience in managing social events that served business development purposes while maintaining appropriate celebration atmosphere and guest engagement protocols. The announcement structure included recognition of our 30-year marriage milestone, followed by presentation of Jonathan's renewable energy consulting venture as natural evolution of his professional capabilities and strategic response to emerging market opportunities. Victoria intended to position the career transition as family achievement that demonstrated forward-thinking business strategy and professional adaptability that warranted guest support and potential client relationship development. The networking facilitation that Victoria planned following the announcement included strategic introduction protocols designed to connect Jonathan with industry participants whose renewable energy projects and investment activities could provide immediate consulting opportunities. Her social influence would enable access to decision-makers while creating social obligation for considerate response to Jonathan's business development approaches and consulting capability presentations. The celebration context provided optimal environment for business development discussions that combined personal relationship warmth with professional opportunity exploration in ways that typically proved more effective than formal business meetings or cold networking approaches. Victoria's event management expertise would create comfortable social dynamics that encouraged substantive business conversations while maintaining celebration atmosphere and anniversary recognition purposes. The strategic timing reflected Victoria's assessment that industry guests would be most receptive to supporting family business initiatives within social contexts, where personal relationships influenced professional consideration, and business development opportunities emerged naturally from shared social experiences and mutual acquaintance networks. As afternoon preparation activities intensified and celebration guests began arriving at the Westchester Country Club, the convergence of professional and personal circumstances created extraordinary tension between maintained anonymity and approaching revelation that would transform every relationship and assumption that had characterized 30 years of family dynamics and social interaction patterns. The intelligence-gathering opportunities provided by guest interactions would soon transition into strategic positioning challenges when my regulatory identity became visible within social contexts that had operated under completely different assumptions about individual importance and professional influence. The comfortable separation between Dr. Margaret Chen Whitmore and Margaret Whitmore was approaching final convergence that would require careful management of complex psychological and social adjustments. Jonathan's confidence in networking opportunities and business development prospects would encounter regulatory realities that exceeded his comprehension and challenged every assumption about family member capabilities and professional relationships. His career transition announcement would create circumstances that revealed his complete dependence upon regulatory favorable treatment from the family member he had systematically underestimated for 3 decades. Victoria's orchestration of celebration events would create perfect stage for demonstration of professional authority that contradicted every assessment she had made about my capabilities and contributions to family success and social status. Her dismissive treatment of my professional activities would encounter undeniable evidence of regulatory influence that controlled the success of several celebration guests and determined market conditions within Jonathan's chosen consulting sector. The regulatory authority that had remained invisible within family contexts for 5 years was approaching complete revelation within social environment that included comprehensive representation of renewable energy industry leadership whose professional success depended directly upon my decision-making and policy development activities. The catalyst moment had arrived when patient preparation would meet perfect opportunity for transformational demonstration of actual worth and professional influence that exceeded every expectation and challenged every assumption about individual capability and family hierarchy that had shaped relationships since our wedding day. The Westchester Country Club ballroom transformed into an elegant celebration space, as afternoon sunlight filtered through tall windows that overlooked manicured gardens and reflected off crystal chandeliers that had witnessed decades of significant social gatherings. The Pearl Anniversary celebration represented culmination of Victoria Whitmore's 18-month planning process, and the attention to detail revealed itself through subtle sophistication that characterized events designed to impress Connecticut's established social and business elite. Guests began arriving at 6:30, creating initial networking opportunities that Victoria had orchestrated to maximize Jonathan's exposure to renewable energy industry participants, while maintaining celebration atmosphere that encouraged substantive business conversations within social contexts. The early reception period provided optimal timing for relationship development activities before formal dinner service and anniversary recognition ceremonies that would anchor the evening's ceremonial components. Harrison Bedford arrived precisely on schedule, representing Northeastern Solar Development Corporation with confidence that reflected his company's prominent position within regional renewable energy development despite ongoing regulatory challenges that remained unknown to other celebration guests. His greeting interactions with Victoria demonstrated social relationship warmth, while his professional demeanor suggested strategic awareness of networking opportunities that the anniversary celebration provided for business development discussions. Patricia Morrison entered the ballroom with theatrical presence that characterized successful consultants who understood the performance aspects of business development within social contexts. Her reputation for regulatory expertise and client success had been built through careful cultivation of industry relationships and strategic positioning that emphasized her claimed abilities to navigate complex approval processes while achieving favorable outcomes for renewable energy developers. The venture capital partners from Greenfield Investment Management approached the celebration with professional sophistication that reflected their experience in evaluating investment opportunities while building strategic relationships that supported portfolio company development. Their presence indicated serious interest in renewable energy sector expansion, while their social interaction approaches demonstrated understanding of how business development often occurred within personal relationship contexts. The first indication that established assumptions might require revision emerged during cocktail reception conversations, when several guests began referencing recent renewable energy policy developments and regulatory decisions that demonstrated sophisticated understanding of Commission activities and strategic implications for industry development patterns. These discussions revealed professional awareness levels that exceeded typical social gathering conversations, while approaching topics that directly intersected with my regulatory responsibilities. Harrison Bedford engaged Jonathan in detailed conversation about regulatory approval challenges that his company faced during utility-scale solar development projects, expressing frustration with Commission review processes, while praising the technical competence and thorough analysis that characterized recent Commissioner decisions within the renewable energy sector. His comments revealed appreciation for regulatory expertise, while remaining unaware that the decision-maker attended the same social gathering as overlooked family member. The irony of Bedford's regulatory assessment became particularly apparent when he mentioned specific Commissioner decisions that I had authored, praising their technical sophistication and balanced stakeholder consideration, while expressing hope that future projects would receive similarly thorough and competent regulatory review. His professional respect for my regulatory capabilities contrasted sharply with his complete ignorance of my identity within the social context where he sought business development opportunities. Patricia Morrison discussed renewable energy consulting market dynamics with several guests, emphasizing the specialized knowledge and regulatory relationships that distinguished successful consulting practices from generalist business advisory services. Her analysis highlighted the importance of understanding Commissioner preferences and decision-making patterns, while underscoring competitive advantages that established consultants maintained through industry experience and Commission relationship management capabilities. The strategic intelligence gathering that these conversations provided revealed industry perspectives on regulatory effectiveness, while validating my professional approach and decision-making competence through objective assessments from participants who spoke candidly about Commissioner performance without awareness of my presence or identity within the social gathering context. Victoria's announcement timing approached as dinner service concluded, and guests settled into comfortable anticipation of ceremonial recognition that would honor 30 years of marriage while introducing Jonathan's professional transition into renewable energy consulting. Her orchestration of celebration events had created optimal social dynamics that encouraged receptive attention while positioning anniversary recognition as prelude to business development opportunity presentation. The formal announcement structure that Victoria had prepared included recognition of marriage milestone achievements, followed by presentation of Jonathan's career transition as strategic response to emerging renewable energy market opportunities that demonstrated professional adaptability and forward-thinking business strategy. Her introduction approach was designed to generate immediate guest support, while creating social obligation for considerate response to Jonathan's consulting capability presentations. Jonathan's preparation for networking conversations had included memorization of industry terminology, market trend analysis, and regulatory framework overview that reflected months of research effort, while revealing fundamental gaps in understanding about Commission decision-making processes and regulatory relationship management requirements that characterized successful renewable energy consulting practices. The strategic positioning that Jonathan intended to establish through announcement presentation emphasized his accounting expertise and financial analysis capabilities, while underestimating the regulatory knowledge and commission relationship requirements that represented primary value sources for renewable energy consulting services within highly specialized markets governed by complex policy frameworks. The anticipation among industry guests reflected genuine interest in supporting family business initiatives within social contexts, while their professional expertise enabled immediate assessment of consulting capability claims and market positioning strategies that Jonathan planned to present during networking discussions following Victoria's announcement activities. Victoria approached the microphone with confidence that reflected decades of experience in managing social events that served business development purposes, while maintaining celebration atmosphere that honored personal milestone achievements. Her announcement preparation had been thorough, and her delivery approach demonstrated sophisticated understanding of audience management and message presentation techniques that maximized impact while encouraging positive guest response. The anniversary recognition portion of Victoria's remarks emphasized 30 years of marriage success while acknowledging extended family contributions and social relationship development that had enriched celebration opportunities and community engagement activities. Her presentation approach balanced personal appreciation with social positioning that reinforced family prominence within Connecticut's established professional and social networks. The career transition announcement began with strategic context about renewable energy market expansion and consulting opportunity development that positioned Jonathan's professional pivot as timely response to emerging business development possibilities within rapidly growing sector that offered substantial financial rewards for qualified advisory service providers. Victoria's presentation of Jonathan's qualifications emphasized accounting expertise, business strategy experience, and analytical capabilities while positioning his consulting practice establishment as natural evolution of professional competence that would serve renewable energy developers through financial planning support and strategic business guidance that complemented technical and regulatory expertise provided by specialized consulting firms. The audience response reflected polite interest combined with professional assessment of business opportunity viability and consulting capability claims that industry participants could evaluate through their comprehensive understanding of renewable energy market requirements and competitive positioning challenges that characterized successful consulting practice development. The networking conversations that followed Victoria's announcement provided extraordinary opportunities for strategic intelligence gathering while testing industry participants' awareness of regulatory dynamics and commissioner authority that would directly affect their business interests and development project success within my jurisdiction. Harrison Bedford approached Jonathan with enthusiasm that reflected genuine interest in supporting consulting practice development, while his conversation revealed sophisticated understanding of regulatory challenges, combined with complete ignorance about commissioner identity and decision-making authority, that controlled his company's project approval prospects and investment timeline success. Patricia Morrison engaged Jonathan in detailed discussion about renewable energy consulting market dynamics, while demonstrating professional expertise that validated her industry reputation, combined with unconscious irony about regulatory relationship advantages that established consultants maintained through commission interaction experience and strategic positioning within specialized advisory markets. The venture capital representatives explored potential collaboration opportunities with Jonathan while revealing investment decision-making criteria that emphasized regulatory risk assessment and commissioner track record analysis that directly referenced my professional performance without awareness that the evaluation subject attended their business development conversation as overlooked family member. Environmental advocacy participants discuss stakeholder engagement strategies and regulatory proceeding approaches, while providing valuable insights about community concerns and policy priorities that inform their organizations' advocacy activities and strategic positioning within commission hearings where I served as primary decision-maker without their recognition. The industry guests who engaged Gies and Jonathan in business development conversations began demonstrating subtle recognition that their professional contexts might intersect with personal social relationships, in ways that required careful consideration of disclosure protocols and strategic communication approaches that protected business interests while maintaining appropriate social interaction standards. The realization that renewable energy consulting success required regulatory expertise and commission relationship management capabilities that exceeded Jonathan's demonstrated qualifications created gradual awareness among industry participants that his consulting practice establishment might encounter significant competitive challenges despite family social connection advantages and accounting competence claims. Professional courtesy protocols that governed business networking within social contexts required supportive response to Jonathan's consulting capability presentations, while industry expertise enabled immediate assessment of market entry viability and competitive positioning challenges that characterized renewable energy advisory service development within specialized markets controlled by regulatory frameworks. The psychological complexity of maintaining social relationship warmth while providing realistic business advice created conversational dynamics that revealed industry participants' growing awareness of potential disconnection between Jonathan's consulting aspirations and market requirements that determined advisory service success within renewable energy development sectors. The strategic intelligence gathering opportunities that these conversations provided enhanced my understanding of industry perspectives while revealing professional assessment patterns that validated regulatory decision-making approaches and policy development priorities that served broader public interests while enabling appropriate private sector development activities. The anniversary celebration conversations established foundation for recognition transformation that would occur when industry participants discovered that their regulatory commissioner attended their networking discussions as systematically underestimated family member whose authority controlled business development success within Jonathan's chosen consulting sector. The professional respect that guests expressed for commission leadership and regulatory decision-making competence provided objective validation of my regulatory effectiveness, while creating dramatic contrast with family dismissal patterns and social assumption frameworks that had characterized 30 years of systematic underestimation and professional invisibility. The business development advice that industry participants provided to Jonathan revealed comprehensive understanding of regulatory relationship requirements and commission authority patterns that demonstrated their professional recognition of commissioner importance while remaining unaware that decision-making authority belonged to overlooked family member who attended their strategic consultation as dismissed domestic supporter. The strategic positioning challenges that guests identified for Jonathan's consulting practice establishment reflected accurate assessment of market requirements and competitive landscape dynamics that would become particularly relevant when regulatory authority relationships transformed from unknown variables into recognized family member professional identity that exceeded every assumption about individual capability and industry influence. The networking relationship development that occurred during anniversary celebration conversations created foundation for complex psychological and professional adjustments that would emerge when comfortable assumptions about family member limitations encountered undeniable evidence of regulatory authority that controlled renewable energy development success throughout New York State and influenced policy frameworks that affected billions of dollars in private investment and infrastructure development activities. The catalyst for comprehensive recognition transformation had been established through social dynamics that revealed industry respect for regulatory leadership while maintaining complete ignorance about commissioner identity within family contexts that had operated under fundamentally incorrect assumptions about individual importance and professional influence patterns that would require dramatic revision when dual identity management concluded and Dr. Margaret Chen Whitmore became visible as the regulatory authority that controlled Jonathan's consulting practice viability and determined celebration guest. The anniversary celebration reached its pivotal moment as dessert service concluded and guests settled into comfortable anticipation of ceremonial recognition that would transition into strategic positioning for the revelation that would transform 30 years of established assumptions. The convergence of professional expertise and personal relationships within the ballroom created unprecedented opportunity for demonstrating regulatory authority while managing complex social dynamics that required careful orchestration to optimize positive outcomes. My assessment of strategic options reflected 5 years of regulatory experience combined with 30 years of managing family relationship dynamics that had prepared me for this moment when professional competence would finally become visible within contexts that had systematically dismissed my capabilities. The psychological preparation that had enabled dual identity maintenance would now support strategic positioning that maximized transformational impact while preserving important relationships and professional effectiveness. The timing considerations that governed Revelation's strategy required careful analysis of guest attention patterns, social interaction dynamics, and business development conversation flows that would determine optimal moments for introducing regulatory identity information without disrupting celebration atmosphere. or creating unnecessary social tension that might undermine positive relationship adjustments and professional recognition opportunities. The audience management requirements for effective revelation demanded sophisticated understanding of industry participant psychology, social hierarchy expectations, and professional credibility assessment patterns that would influence initial reactions and subsequent relationship development opportunities. When my regulatory authority became visible within family and social contexts that had operated under completely different assumptions about individual importance, the strategic objectives that would guide revelation activities included demonstrating professional competence that exceeded every assumption while maintaining dignity and composure that enhanced rather than undermined ongoing regulatory effectiveness and family relationship stability. These goals required careful balance between personal satisfaction and professional responsibility that preserved long-term strategic advantages while achieving immediate recognition transformation. The regulatory authority that I had built over 5 years provided comprehensive foundation for strategic positioning that would establish credibility while demonstrating expertise that exceeded industry participant expectations and challenged established assumptions about individual capability within family and social contexts. This professional foundation represented substantial strategic asset that could be leveraged effectively through careful presentation and strategic timing approaches. The technical competence that characterized my regulatory decision-making had earned respect throughout the renewable energy sector, while remaining invisible within family contexts where complex policy analysis and strategic coordination activities were dismissed as basic administrative support rather than sophisticated professional contribution. This disconnect between professional recognition and personal dismissal created extraordinary opportunity for dramatic demonstration of actual capabilities. The industry relationships that had developed through 5 years of regulatory leadership included comprehensive network of developers, consultants, investors, and policy advocates who recognized my expertise while remaining unaware of family connection patterns that had systematically underestimated my professional identity. These established relationships provided validation sources that could support revelation activities while demonstrating objective professional assessment independent of family bias patterns. The policy influence that my regulatory position enabled extended throughout New York State renewable energy development, while affecting federal coordination activities and interstate commerce patterns that influenced billions of dollars in private investment and infrastructure development. This comprehensive authority represented strategic leverage that exceeded typical commissioner influence, while providing undeniable demonstration of professional significance and industry impact. The intellectual property that I had developed through regulatory experience included policy frameworks, procedural innovations, and strategic analysis approaches that had been adopted by other jurisdictions, while influencing industry best practices and federal policy development activities. These contributions represented tangible evidence of professional competence that transcended simple approval authority to include thought leadership and strategic innovation within renewable energy governance. The revelation strategy that would optimize transformational impact required comprehensive risk assessment that evaluated potential challenges while identifying mitigation approaches that preserved professional effectiveness and family relationship stability during complex adjustment processes that would follow recognition of my regulatory identity within social and business development contexts. The professional reputation considerations that governed revelation timing included maintaining regulatory independence and decision-making credibility that required clear separation between personal relationships and official responsibilities. The ethics frameworks that governed commissioner behavior demanded careful attention to appearance standards and conflict management protocols that prevented inappropriate influence or preferential treatment that could undermine regulatory integrity. The family relationship dynamics that would be affected by revelation included 30 years of established interaction patterns, role expectations, and emotional investment in familiar hierarchies that would require substantial psychological adjustment and strategic communication approaches that minimized defensive reactions while encouraging positive recognition, transformation, and relationship development opportunities. The social network implications of regulatory identity disclosure within Connecticut professional circles included potential changes in business relationship patterns, networking opportunity access, and strategic positioning within established social hierarchies that could affect both positive and negative relationship adjustments depending upon individual response patterns and adaptation capabilities. The business development consequences for Jonathan's consulting practice establishment included immediate recognition of competitive disadvantage, combined with potential access to regulatory expertise and industry relationship advantages that could enhance consulting capability while creating conflict of interest challenges that required careful management and strategic positioning approaches. The revelation approach that would maximize positive outcomes while minimizing unnecessary conflict required sophisticated communication strategy that demonstrated professional competence while maintaining personal dignity and family relationship respect, that preserved important connections during complex adjustment processes and recognition transformation activities. The timing selection for regulatory identity disclosure reflected careful analysis of celebration dynamics, guest attention patterns, and social interaction flows that would provide optimal audience engagement while creating supportive environment for positive recognition adjustment and professional credibility establishment within family and business development contexts. The presentation framework that would introduce my regulatory identity emphasized objective professional achievements while providing context about strategic necessity for maintaining dual identity management during 5 years of regulatory service. This approach positioned revelation as information sharing rather than confrontational challenge to established assumptions or relationship patterns. The evidence preparation that would support revelation activities included regulatory documentation, professional recognition materials, and industry relationship validation sources that provided undeniable demonstration of professional competence, while establishing credibility through objective third-party assessment rather than personal claims or defensive positioning approaches. The audience management strategy that would optimize reception of revelation information included identification of supportive guest relationships, potential resistance sources, and strategic positioning opportunities that could enhance positive response patterns while minimizing defensive reactions or social tension that might undermine transformational impact and relationship development possibilities. The operational approach that would execute revelation strategy required detailed planning of timing sequences, communication protocols, and response management techniques that would demonstrate professional competence, while managing complex social dynamics and relationship adjustment challenges that would emerge when established assumptions encountered undeniable evidence of regulatory authority. The introduction methodology that would present my regulatory identity reflected careful consideration of celebration atmosphere, guest expectation patterns, and social interaction norms that required respectful approach to information sharing while ensuring clear communication of professional significance and industry authority that exceeded every previous assumption about individual capability and contribution patterns. The documentation strategy that would support revelation activities included selective presentation of regulatory materials, professional achievement evidence, and industry recognition validation that demonstrated objective professional assessment while providing tangible proof of expertise and authority that transcended family dismissal patterns and social underestimation frameworks. The response anticipation planning that would prepare for various guest reaction patterns included strategies for managing surprise, skepticism, defensive positioning, and recognition adjustment challenges while maintaining celebration atmosphere and positive relationship development opportunities that preserved important connections during complex transformation processes. The relationship management approach that would navigate family dynamic changes during revelation activities emphasized maintaining respect and dignity while establishing appropriate recognition of professional competence and industry authority that required acknowledgement without creating unnecessary conflict or social tension that might undermine long-term relationship stability and collaborative possibilities. The mental preparation that would enable effective revelation execution required comprehensive emotional regulation and strategic thinking coordination that would maintain composure while managing complex social dynamics and family relationship adjustments that would emerge when 30 years of systematic dismissal encountered undeniable demonstration of extraordinary professional competence and regulatory authority. The confidence establishment approach that would support revelation activities emphasized objective professional achievements and industry recognition patterns that provided substantial foundation for credibility demonstration, while transcending personal validation needs through focus on broader educational value and transformational impact that could benefit other women facing similar underestimation challenges. The resilience preparation that would enable management of potential negative reactions included emotional regulation techniques and prospective maintenance strategies that preserved long-term strategic objectives while managing immediate social challenges and relationship adjustment difficulties that might emerge during complex recognition, transformation, and assumption revision processes. The strategic patience application that had enabled 5 years of dual identity management would continue supporting revelation activities through careful timing, appropriate response modulation, and relationship preservation priorities that maintained important connections while establishing professional recognition that reflected actual capabilities and industry influence patterns. The transformational leadership approach that would guide revelation implementation emphasized service to broader recognition of professional women's capabilities while demonstrating that systematic underestimation often masks extraordinary competence and authority that deserves acknowledgement and respect within both professional and personal relationship contexts. The anniversary celebration reached optimal timing for revelation implementation, as guest attention focused on ceremonial recognition activities, while industry participants demonstrated receptive engagement with business development discussions that created perfect context for introducing regulatory identity information that would transform every assumption about family member capabilities and professional influence patterns. The strategic positioning that had been developed through months of careful planning would now be tested through implementation activities that required sophisticated social interaction management, while demonstrating professional competence that exceeded every expectation and challenged fundamental assumptions about individual worth and contribution patterns within family and social relationship frameworks. The 30 years of systematic underestimation that had created psychological preparation for this moment would now transform into extraordinary demonstration of regulatory authority that controlled renewable energy development throughout New York State, while influencing policy frameworks and investment patterns that affected billions of dollars in private capital allocation and infrastructure development activities. Dr. Margaret Chen Whitmore had completed strategic preparation for revealing regulatory identity within family and social contexts that had dismissed her capabilities while depending unknowingly upon market confidence and investment conditions that her professional decisions had created through consistent technical competence and strategic leadership within renewable energy governance frameworks that determined industry success patterns throughout the regional jurisdiction where Jonathan hoped to establish consulting practice that would depend entirely upon favorable regulatory treatment from his systematically underestimated wife who possessed The optimal moment for revelation arrived as the anniversary celebration transitioned from ceremonial recognition to networking conversations that demonstrated industry participants' professional expertise while maintaining complete ignorance about regulatory authority relationships that would transform their understanding of family dynamics and business development opportunities. The convergence of circumstances provided unprecedented opportunity for demonstrating regulatory competence through strategic information disclosure that would establish credibility while challenging fundamental assumptions about individual capability. Victoria's announcement regarding Jonathan's renewable energy consulting venture had concluded successfully, generating polite applause and supportive comments from guests who appreciated strategic positioning within growing market sectors, while remaining unaware of regulatory dependencies that would determine his consulting practice success or failure. The networking conversations that followed provided natural context for introducing professional information that would demonstrate expertise while revealing authority relationships that exceeded every assumption about family member contributions. The strategic timing that I had selected for revelation activities reflected careful analysis of guest attention patterns and social interaction dynamics that created receptive environment for information sharing while maintaining celebration atmosphere that encouraged positive recognition adjustment rather than defensive positioning or social conflict. The approach emphasized objective professional demonstration rather than personal vindication or confrontational challenge to established relationship hierarchies. Harrison Bedford approached our conversation group with renewed enthusiasm following Victoria's announcement, expressing genuine interest in supporting Jonathan's consulting practice development, while demonstrating sophisticated understanding of renewable energy market challenges that provided perfect context for introducing regulatory expertise that would establish my professional credibility within industry contexts. The conversation development that followed Bedford's engagement created natural opportunity for discussing regulatory frameworks and policy development activities that governed renewable energy projects throughout New York State. When Bedford mentioned specific challenges with commission review processes, I responded with detailed analysis of regulatory procedures and strategic guidance that demonstrated comprehensive understanding of approval mechanisms while revealing expertise that exceeded typical administrative knowledge. The regulatory analysis that I provided during conversation with Bedford included sophisticated discussion of environmental impact assessment requirements, grid integration technical standards, and stakeholder consultation protocols that reflected comprehensive understanding of Commission decision-making processes, while demonstrating technical competence that transcended simple procedural knowledge to include strategic policy development and implementation expertise. Bedford's response to my regulatory insights revealed immediate recognition of professional competence, combined with growing curiosity about the source of such detailed Commission knowledge and policy analysis capabilities. His follow-up questions about specific regulatory precedents and Commissioner decision-making patterns created additional opportunities for demonstrating expertise while building toward revelation of my professional identity within Commission leadership structure. The technical discussion that developed between Bedford and myself attracted attention from other industry participants who recognized sophisticated regulatory analysis while remaining puzzled about the source of such comprehensive Commission knowledge within family celebration context. Patricia Morrison approached our conversation with professional interest that reflected her consulting practice expertise while demonstrating competitive assessment of regulatory knowledge that appeared to exceed her own established capabilities. Morrison's engagement in technical discussion provided additional validation of my regulatory expertise while creating broader audience for demonstration of policy analysis capabilities that distinguished Commission leadership from typical industry participation. Her professional recognition of advanced regulatory knowledge, combined with obvious confusion about its source within family social context, created strategic opportunity for expanding credibility demonstration activities. The venture capital representatives from Greenfield Investment Management observed our regulatory discussion with increasing professional interest, while recognizing sophisticated policy analysis that influenced their investment decision-making frameworks. Their participation in technical conversation provided objective validation of regulatory expertise while creating broader industry audience for professional competence demonstration that would support revelation activities. The discussion of renewable energy policy development provided comprehensive platform for demonstrating strategic thinking capabilities that exceeded typical industry participation, while revealing policy influence and decision-making authority that characterized Commission leadership responsibilities. The technical complexity of policy frameworks created natural context for explaining Commissioner authority while establishing credibility through demonstrated expertise rather than simple position claims. When Morrison inquired about recent policy modifications affecting environmental compliance requirements, I provided detailed explanation of policy development processes, including stakeholder consultation activities, technical analysis requirements, and strategic coordination with federal agencies that reflected direct experience with Commission policymaking rather than external observation or research-based knowledge. The specificity of policy information that I shared during conversation included internal Commission coordination activities and strategic decision-making considerations that would be available only to Commission leadership or senior staff members. This information depth created growing recognition among industry participants that my regulatory knowledge reflected direct professional experience rather than consulting practice research or academic study. Bedford's recognition of my comprehensive regulatory knowledge prompted direct inquiry about my professional background within renewable energy sector. His question created strategic opportunity for revelation of Commission position while maintaining appropriate professional dignity and social interaction protocols that preserved celebration atmosphere during complex information disclosure activities. The response framework that I employed for addressing Bedford's professional inquiry emphasized objective credential presentation while providing context about strategic necessity for maintaining professional anonymity within family social contexts. This approach positioned revelation as information sharing rather than dramatic announcement, while demonstrating regulatory authority through documented achievements and industry recognition. The professional credential presentation that revealed my position as Regional Regulatory Commissioner created immediate transformation of conversation dynamics while generating industry participant recognition that exceeded every previous assumption about individual competence and professional influence within renewable energy governance frameworks. The revelation impact demonstrated extraordinary gap between family dismissal patterns and actual regulatory authority. Bedford's reaction to discovering my commissioner identity reflected professional respect combined with psychological adjustment challenges that characterized recognition of substantial misjudgment regarding individual capability and authority relationships. His immediate shift from casual networking conversation to formal professional acknowledgement demonstrated industry understanding of commissioner influence, while revealing social assumption limitations that had prevented accurate assessment. Morrison's response to learning about my regulatory position included obvious recalculation of professional relationship dynamics, combined with strategic assessment of networking opportunities that my commission authority represented for her consulting practice development. Her professional courtesy protocols shifted dramatically as she recognized regulatory decision-making authority that could influence her client relationships and business development prospects. The venture capital representatives demonstrated sophisticated understanding of regulatory authority implications, while expressing genuine appreciation for commissioner accessibility within social contexts that typically remain separate from professional relationship development opportunities. Their response reflected investment industry recognition of regulatory influence, while acknowledging social privilege of direct access to decision-making authority. Environmental advocacy participants who overheard revelation conversations approached with professional interest combined with strategic assessment of policy influence opportunities that my commission position represented for their organizational priorities and advocacy campaign effectiveness. Their engagement demonstrated stakeholder recognition of commissioner authority, while revealing complex political dynamics that characterized renewable energy policy development. The industry recognition that followed revelation of my regulatory identity created cascading validation of professional competence that extended throughout Celebration guest network, while demonstrating objective assessment of commissioner authority independent of family relationship contexts or social assumption frameworks. This professional validation provided comprehensive demonstration of expertise that exceeded every previous family assessment of individual capability. Multiple industry participants approached subsequent conversations with formal professional courtesy that contrasted dramatically with previous casual social interaction patterns, while demonstrating recognition of regulatory authority that influenced their business development activities and strategic planning decisions. The transformation of social dynamics provided clear evidence of professional competence recognition within contexts that had previously dismissed individual contributions. The business card exchange activities that followed regulatory identity revelation demonstrated industry desire for professional relationship development, while providing tangible evidence of networking value that my commission position represented for renewable energy sector participants. These professional relationship opportunities contradicted family assumptions about limited career significance and social contribution patterns. Professional invitation requests for industry conference speaking engagements, policy development consultation activities, and strategic planning participation reflected comprehensive recognition of regulatory expertise, while demonstrating demand for commissioner insights that extended beyond simple approval authority to include thought leadership and strategic guidance capabilities within renewable energy governance frameworks. The respectful attention that industry participants directed toward my policy analysis comments and strategic insights during subsequent celebration conversations provided objective validation of professional competence, while demonstrating recognition patterns that exceeded family acknowledgement levels and challenged systematic dismissal assumptions that had characterized 30 years of relationship dynamics. The revelation of regulatory identity transformed strategic intelligence gathering opportunities while providing comprehensive access to industry perspectives that had previously required careful anonymity management and indirect information collection approaches. The professional recognition that followed identity disclosure enabled direct consultation about market dynamics and strategic priorities that enhanced regulatory decision-making effectiveness. Industry participants who recognized my commissioner authority provided valuable insights about development challenges, investment decision-making factors, and policy implementation effectiveness that informed regulatory strategic planning, while demonstrating their professional respect for commission leadership and decision-making competence. These consultation opportunities enhanced regulatory effectiveness while validating professional approach and policy development priorities. The business intelligence that emerged through direct industry engagement included comprehensive assessment of competitive dynamics, technology adoption patterns, and market development trends that provided strategic context for regulatory decision-making, while demonstrating industry confidence in commission leadership and policy development capabilities that supported renewable energy sector growth. Stakeholder perspective gathering that became possible through professional recognition included environmental advocacy priorities, community engagement concerns, and political coordination challenges that influenced regulatory strategic planning, while providing comprehensive understanding of public interest considerations that shaped policy development and implementation approaches. The professional network expansion that resulted from regulatory identity revelation created ongoing consultation opportunities while establishing commissioner accessibility that enhanced industry relationship management and stakeholder coordination effectiveness. These relationship development opportunities strengthened regulatory leadership capabilities while providing strategic advantages for policy implementation success. Jonathan's reaction to discovering my regulatory identity reflected complex psychological adjustment challenges that included recognition of substantial professional misjudgment combined with strategic assessment of business development opportunities that my commission authority represented for his consulting practice establishment. His response demonstrated both personal relationship confusion and professional opportunity recognition that characterized complex family dynamic revision processes. Victoria's observation of industry participant recognition patterns and professional courtesy transformations created obvious contradiction with her established assessment of my professional capabilities and family contribution patterns. Her psychological adjustment to regulatory authority revelation required fundamental revision of relationship hierarchy assumptions while acknowledging systematic misjudgment regarding individual competence and professional influence. The social dynamic transformation that occurred during celebration conversations provided undeniable demonstration of professional respect and industry recognition that exceeded family acknowledgement patterns while challenging dismissal assumptions that had characterized 30 years of systematic underestimation within family relationship contexts. Extended family member reactions to observing industry professional courtesy and recognition patterns created growing awareness of substantial disconnect between family assessment and objective professional evaluation of individual capabilities and authority relationships within renewable energy governance frameworks that influenced regional economic development. The celebration atmosphere transformation that resulted from regulatory identity revelation demonstrated extraordinary gap between family assumptions and professional reality while providing educational opportunity about systematic underestimation consequences and recognition adjustment requirements that characterized complex relationship dynamic revision processes during major assumption challenge situations. Dr. Margaret Chen Whitmore had successfully demonstrated regulatory authority that exceeded every family assumption about individual capability while establishing professional recognition that validated 5 years of strategic positioning and 30 years of patient endurance during systematic dismissal that had masked extraordinary competence and comprehensive industry influence within renewable energy development governance frameworks throughout New York State regional jurisdiction, where business success depended entirely upon favorable regulatory treatment from the family member who had been consistently underestimated despite possessing decisive authority. The revelation of my regulatory identity during the Pearl Anniversary celebration created ripple effects that extended far beyond the immediate gathering, influencing professional relationships, policy discussions, and strategic planning activities throughout the renewable energy sector, in ways that demonstrated the multiplicative impact of recognition when competence finally becomes visible within appropriate contexts. The transformation established precedents for enhanced regulatory accessibility and industry engagement that improved policy development effectiveness while strengthening stakeholder coordination capabilities. Within 48 hours of the anniversary celebration, my commission office received numerous requests for policy clarification meetings, strategic consultation sessions, and stakeholder engagement discussions from industry participants who recognized the value of direct regulatory access for enhancing their understanding of policy priorities and decision-making frameworks. These professional interaction opportunities reflected genuine industry appreciation for commissioner accessibility, while demonstrating respect for regulatory independence and ethical boundary requirements. The enhanced communication channels that emerged through professional recognition enabled more effective policy implementation and stakeholder coordination activities that served broader public interests, while providing industry participants with clearer guidance about regulatory expectations and compliance requirements. This improved communication framework reduced administrative burdens while enhancing policy effectiveness through better understanding of implementation challenges and strategic coordination opportunities. Regional economic development organizations throughout New York State began incorporating information about enhanced regulatory accessibility and stakeholder engagement capabilities into their business attraction and retention strategies for renewable energy sector companies. The recognition of commissioner expertise and professional engagement approach created competitive advantages for the state in attracting renewable energy investment and technology development activities. Environmental advocacy organizations expressed appreciation for enhanced policy dialogue opportunities while maintaining appropriate professional boundaries that preserved regulatory independence and decision-making integrity. The expanded stakeholder engagement framework created better understanding of environmental protection priorities while improving coordination between regulatory oversight and advocacy organization objectives. The demonstration of regulatory competence through professional recognition activities influenced organizational culture development within the New York State Energy Authority by establishing enhanced expectations for commissioner expertise, stakeholder engagement, and strategic communication that elevated performance standards while improving public service effectiveness and policy development outcomes. Commission staff members who observed industry participant recognition of regulatory expertise expressed increased professional pride and strategic focus that reflected their association with respected regulatory leadership, while enhancing their own commitment to technical excellence and professional development activities. The enhanced organizational reputation created recruitment advantages for attracting qualified candidates while improving retention of experienced staff members. The policy development processes within the Commission benefited from enhanced industry engagement and stakeholder consultation opportunities that provided better information for decision-making while improving understanding of implementation challenges and strategic coordination requirements. These improved processes reduced policy revision needs while enhancing compliance effectiveness and public interest outcomes. Interagency coordination activities at state and federal levels reflected enhanced recognition of Commission expertise and strategic thinking capabilities that improved policy coordination effectiveness, while strengthening New York State influence within national renewable energy governance frameworks and environmental policy development initiatives. International renewable energy governance networks recognized Commission leadership contributions while inviting increased participation in global policy development activities and strategic coordination initiatives that enhanced New York State visibility, while providing valuable comparative perspective on renewable energy governance approaches and implementation strategies. The professional recognition that emerged through regulatory identity revelation influenced industry standards development by demonstrating enhanced expectations for technical competence, stakeholder engagement, and strategic coordination that elevated performance standards throughout the renewable energy sector while improving environmental protection outcomes and public interest service delivery. Consulting firms throughout the renewable energy sector began incorporating enhanced regulatory relationship management and policy development expertise into their service offerings, while recognizing the competitive advantages that comprehensive regulatory knowledge provided for client relationship development and project success outcomes. This industry evolution improved overall service quality while enhancing regulatory compliance effectiveness. Technology development companies recognize the value of early regulatory engagement and policy development consultation for optimizing product design and market introduction strategies, while ensuring appropriate environmental protection and public interest consideration throughout innovation development processes. These enhanced industry practices improve technology adoption effectiveness while reducing regulatory review timelines. Financial institutions involved in renewable energy project financing incorporated enhanced regulatory risk assessment and stakeholder coordination considerations into their due diligence processes, while recognizing the value of regulatory expertise access for improving investment decision-making and project success outcomes. These improved practices reduced financing costs while enhancing project viability and environmental protection effectiveness. Environmental consulting organizations enhance their regulatory expertise and policy development capabilities, while recognizing competitive advantages that comprehensive Commission knowledge provided for client service delivery and stakeholder coordination activities. This professional development improved environmental protection outcomes, while enhancing regulatory compliance effectiveness. The recognition of regulatory expertise created numerous opportunities for educational engagement and professional mentorship activities that demonstrated commitment to knowledge sharing and professional development, while inspiring other women in technical and regulatory leadership positions to pursue excellence, despite systematic underestimation or recognition challenges within traditional organizational structures. Academic institutions throughout the region requested guest lectures and policy development seminars that provided students with practical understanding of renewable energy governance, while offering faculty members insights into policy implementation challenges and strategic coordination requirements. These educational activities enhanced academic program relevance while inspiring student interest in environmental policy and regulatory career opportunities. Professional development programs within government agencies and private sector organizations sought strategic leadership insights and career development guidance that reflected experience managing complex regulatory responsibilities, while navigating traditional organizational structures that sometimes failed to recognize women's technical competence and professional contributions appropriately. Mentorship program participation provided opportunities for supporting emerging leaders within renewable energy governance and environmental policy development, while sharing strategic insights about managing systematic underestimation and building professional recognition through consistent excellence and strategic positioning approaches that served broader public interests. Conference speaking engagements and policy development workshops created platforms for sharing strategic insights about renewable energy governance while inspiring other professional women to pursue leadership positions, despite traditional organizational barriers or social assumption patterns that sometimes prevented appropriate recognition of technical competence and strategic thinking capabilities. The enhanced regulatory effectiveness that resulted from improved industry engagement and stakeholder coordination created tangible benefits for communities throughout New York State through accelerated renewable energy deployment, improved environmental protection outcomes, and enhanced economic development opportunities that served broader public interests while demonstrating the multiplicative impact of individual excellence. Local communities benefited from improved regulatory processes that reduced project development timelines while ensuring appropriate environmental protection and community engagement requirements that balanced economic development opportunities with quality of life considerations and environmental stewardship responsibilities. These improved outcomes reflected enhanced regulatory effectiveness and stakeholder coordination capabilities. Environmental justice initiatives throughout the state benefited from enhanced policy development and implementation effectiveness that ensured appropriate consideration of community concerns while promoting renewable energy development approaches that served environmental protection objectives and economic development priorities within historically underserved areas. Economic development benefits emerged through enhanced business attraction and retention activities that leveraged improved regulatory accessibility and policy development effectiveness for creating competitive advantages in renewable energy sector development while maintaining appropriate environmental protection standards and community engagement requirements. Educational institutions and research organizations throughout the region gained access to practical policy development insights and strategic coordination expertise that enhanced academic program relevance, while providing students and faculty with valuable understanding of renewable energy governance and environmental policy implementation challenges. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.